Is Journey to Foundation a clunky first-person sci-fi adventure that you should skip, or is it a visual storytelling masterpiece that you should play? Welcome to another episode of Player Skip on GameList Plus. I'm Josh, and today I'm reviewing Journey to Foundation on Quest 3. As usual, I will go over the different aspects of the game, giving each a rating between 1 and 10, 10 being flawless. I'll give an overall score and the verdict of whether or not you should play or skip the game. First, what is Journey to Foundation? While at first glance this may look like a sci-fi first-person shooter, Journey to Foundation most definitely is not that. Although it does have elements of first-person shooters, like shooting a weapon in the first person, this game really does rely heavily on its storytelling and is more of a sci-fi action-adventure game told from the first-person perspective. So how is it? First, I'll talk about the graphics. I'm not going to mince words here. The graphics in Journey to Foundation are really lackluster in almost every aspect. It really doesn't feel like the graphics were actually meant for the Quest 3, but simply for the Quest 2. It was released in the fall of 2023, right around the same time that the Quest 3 was released, and you'd think that they would have made it a point to up the graphical quality from where it was on the previous generation headset. It's really unfortunate that the quality of the textures and the views from outside the ship windows is so pixelated and bland. Alongside such a great sci-fi world that is built here, I found myself constantly wishing that it just looked better. And it's not the worst graphics that I've ever seen, and honestly, the character models are really not that bad. The faces are expressive and have a certain style to them, thankfully, but all around, the graphics in Journey to Foundation just really don't do the story justice. After playing a game like Red Matter 2 on Quest 3, I just expect a certain level of sci-fi graphic quality when it comes to the system, and this is nowhere near that, unfortunately. I give the graphics in Journey to Foundation a 5. I want to take a moment to thank the sponsor of today's video, VR Wave. The VR Wave MetaQuest 3 lenses correct nearsightedness, farsightedness, and astigmatism. They're tailor-made precisely to your eye prescription. Players no longer have to fit their eyeglasses into the VR headset and risk scratching the headset lenses. Even for people with perfect vision, VR Wave blue light filter and anti-glare lenses can help protect your eye's health, as blue light will cause eye fatigue and sleep disruption, which can be filtered out by VR Wave lenses. VR Wave has worldwide shipping. Simply order at www.vr-wave.store by filling out the online form. The magnetic design is ingenious and it enables easy switch and play, so if you and other family members have different prescription types, you can get separate lenses that just pop in and out very easily using the magnetic attachment. I'm using my VR Wave lenses in my Quest 3 obviously, but VR Wave also sells lenses for Quest 2, HP Reverb, PSVR 2, Apple Vision Pro, and more. Just click the link in the description below to get your VR Wave lenses. Now back to the review. Next, I'll talk about the gameplay. The gameplay in Journey to Foundation is fun on the most basic level, but nothing to call home about. You go through a series of areas interacting with lots of characters, making decisions on dialogue responses as you go. There's very little exploration, as this is really a linear storyline with some choices along the way. On your way, you will encounter enemies that you will have shootouts with that are very basic, having you duck and cover behind barriers, then shoot your way through in a rather slow pace. Like I said before, this is not really a first-person shooter, so even though you do a bit of shooting in the game, the shooting controls feel pretty clunky. Thankfully, where this game shines is its storytelling, which I'll talk about later. Along with the heavy dialogue and choice making as you explore, you'll use a little hacking ability where you pull out a cord from your wrist and solve very simple block puzzles to get past barriers. Then there are other parts where you'll use little wheels and switches while collecting and reading holograms along the journey that add to the story in a way. I did enjoy some of the climbing moments, which are actually fully skippable if they aren't your cup of tea. I also enjoyed using the little soldering iron tool to burn open the seals on various hatches throughout the game. All around, the pacing and the controls in this game are very low key. You can never pick up your speed no matter where you are, so just be ready for a very slow roll as you progress. Anyone who's looking for a fast-paced action sci-fi experience definitely needs to look elsewhere, because this game is not about that. Another element that you use throughout this game is your mentalic ability, which allows you to read the minds and basically the emotions of the various characters that you encounter as you progress. And then ultimately you even get the ability to manipulate and even kill people with your mentalic abilities, which did feel pretty cool when you first start using it, but then it becomes pretty basic and repetitive over the course of the game. I never hated it, but I never really loved it. That is really the best way that I can describe the gameplay in this game. It's just very middle of the road. It's not exciting in any way, and it's not completely boring. It's just somewhere in the middle. So I give the gameplay in Journey to Foundation a 6. If you're enjoying this video, this is the perfect time for you to hit that like button. It really helps my channel a lot. And also don't forget to hit subscribe so you can see all my upcoming videos. Next, I'll talk about the strongest aspect of this game, the story. Now, right from the beginning of Journey to Foundation, it's easy to tell that this is based on lore that is much deeper than the game itself. There's a feeling that this world has existed for a very long time, and it has in essence. The original Isaac Asimov story Foundation is from the 1950s, and more recently there's been an Apple TV show of the same name. It's all based within the same universe. Thankfully, it's all well put together lore with factions and rivals and history all interwoven into each of the characters' lives. The story takes some time to pick up and really get interesting, but once it does, it's actually quite good, especially for a VR game. The story is really brought to life by the performances of all the top-tier voice acting throughout the game. I cared about the characters and the outcomes of decisions much more than I have in any VR game I've played up to this point. There's an entire encyclopedia mode that you can access at the chapter breaks that lets you really learn the ins and outs of all the different aspects of the Isaac Asimov-inspired world. As you near the end of the game, some of the big reveals that you get make the whole journey worth the trouble of getting through it. I give the story in Journey to Foundation an 8. Next, I'll talk about the audio. As much as the voice acting and the actual sound effects and music are really good, sometimes it's just a little strangely off in the mixing of the volume. There are moments where you can barely hear the characters speaking over the other sounds. I don't want to ruin any of the dramatic moments in the game, but sometimes the audio just doesn't match up spatially with the scope of what's happening around you, and there's no way to adjust the levels of audio to make it work better. All that being said, it is not impossible to hear or understand what the characters are saying when they say it, and it's so well said by the actors that it keeps you interested in what's going on. So I give the audio in Journey to Foundation a 7. Next, I'll talk about Immersion. Immersion is such an important part of VR, and there are moments in this game where it does really feel immersive, but unfortunately so much of the time I end up losing that feeling of immersion when I look out a ship's window and I just see a horribly pixelated image. The most frustrating thing about playing this game is looking out a window and seeing this horrible pixelation that just pulls me out of the game completely. It really is a bummer because I really want to be invested in completely taken away by this game, but it pulls me out every time I see that goofy fuzziness. Those strange audio issues and the mundane graphics are really a detractor from feeling like you're really in this fantastical sci-fi world that is so well built in story. I played this on the Quest 3, and I know the graphics are upgraded somewhat for the PC VR version that was recently released as well, so maybe the aspect of immersion is better on the PC VR version, but from the few minutes that I played on PC VR, just at the beginning, it looked smoother and sharper a little bit, but not that much better. That being said, I am reviewing the Quest 3 version, so I will have to give the immersion in Journey to Foundation a 6. And finally, let's talk replay value. This is one of those things that could go both ways depending on how much you enjoy this game. I know a lot of people truly love this game, so for them, playing through the entire story again, making different choices, is well worth it. But for me, getting through this game the very first time was more than enough. So this is really a split. I think that the replay value in general is not great because the game is a bit cumbersome to get through and becomes a little bit monotonous at times. But if you're really into story discovery and seeing all the little intricate changes that you could make in your decisions throughout the game, then this could definitely have a lot more replay value for you. But overall, I give the replay value for myself personally a 5. So what's the verdict? This is a really tricky game to review for me. I truly found myself wanting to like it more than I did because it's got a great story and it's very well constructed. But then on the other side of the coin, I feel very frustrated with the lackluster graphics, the very basic gameplay mechanics, and what turns out to be, at times, somewhat boring gameplay. It just feels like this game could have been so much better if more polish had been given to the overall delivery of graphics, gameplay, and immersion. Even though I wanted to like this game more than I did, I still think that the developers were on the right track, and I do want to see more from them. It's probably the best storytelling that you'll find in VR so far, but it reminds me of a very dumbed down version of the Mass Effect games on console, which ultimately is a big compliment, but if you're expecting that level of combat and storytelling, you will be sorely disappointed. So, while the gameplay, graphics, and sound aren't all that great, the story and performances bring quality to this game that just barely saves it from being boring. As much as this game is great conceptually, in its execution, I have to give the overall score for Journey to Foundation a 6. So should you play or skip this game? I somewhat reluctantly have to say, skip this one. As much as I'd like to suggest this game, I just can't. But my feelings aside, if you do have the patience for somewhat clunky combat and basic gameplay for the sake of a great story in VR, then maybe you should give it a go. I mean, there are many people that love this game. This developer deserves the recognition for what they accomplished, but I just think they could have done better overall. But that's just what I think. What do you think? What is the best storytelling experience you've had in VR? What element of VR games do you find the most important? The gameplay, the graphics, the controls, something else? Let's talk about it in the comments below. If you do decide to pick up Journey to Foundation to support this developer and good storytelling in VR, please use my Meta affiliate link in the description below, and your purchase will also support GameList Plus at no additional cost to you. You can also support GameList Plus directly with the Super Thanks button at the bottom of the video. While you're here, why don't you check out my play or skip review of Arcade Paradise VR, an arcade-based business sim on Quest 3. That's it for today's video. Thanks so much for watching. Thank you to all my subscribers for continuing to watch. I'll see you guys next time on GameList Plus.
But I am convinced that we can pull it back from the brink.